Welcome to Grocery Shop. I'm Cate Carley. With me today is Andrew Lipsman, retail media expert and friend of Inmar. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks so much for having me.
Here we go. You ready?
I'm ready.
Number one. Retail media is often called the third wave of digital advertising. Where do you think we are within this third wave right now?
It's interesting. The context for the industry right now is that maybe growth isn't as robust as it used to be, and that maybe things are petering out. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think this is just a natural part of the progression. And I think we're actually very much in the early innings. If I had to pick an inning, I'd say second inning.
Nice. Wow.
Maybe third,
Okay.
but no later than the third. I mean, we're still very early in the growth trajectory.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that, obviously we've seen $60 billion come into the market, but I still see so much more runway. I say that the future of retail media is the future of all media. And why that might sound like a little bit of hyperbole at the beginning, it's actually not, because what I'm really saying is that retail media is going to touch all the major pools of ad spending, whether that's TV's becoming performance TV, offsite is not going to be powered by cookies in the future, it's going to be powered by first party data. And then digital out of home, right? That's kind of moving to in-store. So I just see retail touching everything in the future. And we're still building a lot of those things. And really, there's maybe two fairly mature retail media networks today. A lot of them are growing and building nice businesses, but they have a lot of room to improve. So I just think there's way more reasons to be very optimistic about the future.
That's awesome. Lots of headroom then.
Lots of headroom.
All right. So what will it take then for the rest of the market to start to steal share from the two biggest players?
Well, I think they need to capitalize on the opportunities that they have. So it begins first with on-site. As I said, Amazon and Walmart are pretty mature in terms of how well they're monetizing their on-site business, although they even have some running room still. So the first thing is, I think that every other retail media network needs to do a better job of capitalizing on what they have on-site. But the real opportunity and the leverage point to gain share is going to be in-store, because that's where Amazon, at least, is relatively less robust in their business. Yes, they have Whole Food stores and they have a store footprint, but it's not anything like the juggernaut online business. So in-store is where really all other retailers set themselves apart. They've got the store footprint, they've got a lot of potential with their in-store media business. And I think also they're not taking credit for a lot of what they're driving in store. So I think there's going to be a big evolution in measurement to capture more and more how online ads are driving offline sales. And those are really the key levers for how they can grow, just by taking credit for a lot of what they're already doing.
So it's a great segue to mid-size and regional grocers are trying to compete. So what's the playbook for retailers who don't have that Amazon and Walmart level scale, would you say?
Yeah, I think they just need to be realistic about their expectations, that there's probably only room for so many true walled gardens, or where you're really going to be the front door for most advertising buys. Their power is in aggregation. Yes, many of them are competing with each other, but there's a lot of parallels in their businesses, and they have the value of this in-store inventory. And right now, one of the big limiting factors behind that ad market growing is the lack of scale. I mean, I know more and more CPGs that say, I really want to invest more in in-store, but I don't have the scale to do it. Well, they're selling through all of these store channels, and they want to be where they're being sold. They just need to have it be easy to do. And so the way to do it is to have that aggregation, have scale, and the consistency in being able to plan, activate, and then obviously measure after the fact. If everybody's doing it, they all have their own retail media networks, they all have a different way to calculate ROAS, they all have different ad tech underpinnings. I mean, it gets messy really quickly. So I think this is a place where bringing it all together is good for everyone, because it actually creates more demand. This is a huge market enabler. I mean, we're talking about a market today, the in-store digital, that's still just about $1 billion, right? And my calculations is this is a market that should easily be at least $20 billion. How do we get there? It's giving the scale that the brands need to be able to invest bigger budgets, because right now it's mostly experimental.
Right. Those are key factors, the consistency too, and being able to service consumers across the entire mid-sized category, I'd say. So if you were responsible for running a retail media network, what is the single biggest change you would make to improve results for your brand?
So I think a lot of people would assume that I would say something about measurement. Like maybe I'd switch from a ROAS to an iROAS standard. And I can dream, but I'm also realistic. And I know that transition is not going to happen overnight. I think what I'd really like to see is for retail media networks to think more like media companies and understand that they have high value media. I don't think we have fully valued the media quality, the creative, giving the ad formats that really help bring commerce media to life. And so I think that's a source of a lot of innovation. And then within that context, I think creators increasingly and personalities can help bring even more of the media to life. So I think a lot about creators and how they can be integrated into campaigns across video formats, on-site, off-site, and in-store. I think that's the future. Now, I think we've been a little bit siloed in thinking that everything has to just be about this performance closed loop. That's a key part of it. I don't want us to lose sight of historical brand building elements. And so we can get performance myopia and stop thinking about the branding effects. And I actually worry about this with something like performance TV. We need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time and be able to understand branding effects and performance effects at the same time. Otherwise, we're going to completely undervalue all this media.
Yeah, hold that thought. I love the creator thought because I do think that's an important thing we'll touch on. So what media activation channels have the biggest opportunity growth for large retailers? And how is that different for the mid and long tier retailers?
Well, the biggest retailers right now, I mean, we I think are coming to a big inflection point in performance TV next year. And that's because Amazon is now underpinning so much of the ecosystem, all this ad-supported inventory, and they obviously have a formidable apparatus. Walmart, right, they're just getting into that space following their acquisition of Vizio. So the two big players, they're gonna have a nice play there. A lot of the other large retailers have unique data and partnerships, media partnerships that they'll be able to bring it to bear. With respect to all other retailers, they don't realistically have that same opportunity in performance TV. But there's other big ad markets that are going to form. And the biggest one that I think, I call it the next major media channel, is in-store media. So to me, that's kind of their form of TV. Right? There are a lot of TV-like qualities to in-store media. I'm not going to do 30-second storytelling, but you do have scarcity. You do have high-quality video-like media. You have cultural relevance. You reach valuable audiences, the 18 to 49 demo that TV has historically been able to reach. So for all these reasons, I think that's kind of their TV play in the future.
Yeah. And the mindset of the consumer actually in the store is key, the context and the environment.
These are things that TV can't match, right? The being contextually relevant. Yeah, and even, I think we also don't fully realize TV has always been where the creatives have wanted to spend their time, and rightfully so. But think about in-store, digital in-store as a new creative palette for the creatives and agencies. To me, the ability to not just have that rich video, but be able to introduce experiences in a three-dimensional environment. I mean, there's going to be really new, interesting creative stuff that happens that we've never seen before. So I think agencies, frankly, should be pretty excited about this.
All right. That's interesting. But retail media is often seen as a lower funnel tactic. So how are others making the case internally to their CMO that retail media networks can really drive upper funnel brand impact as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a struggle. It's not happening maybe as fast as it should. Those who are having success, I think, are convincing their CMO that, hey, this is the media that we've always cared about. What does the CMO care about most? TV and social. It's probably at the top of their list. And like I said, now as TV becomes performance TV, CMO can't ignore it anymore. This is going to be a big part of that buy. And then with in-store, that's the one that's a little harder to convince the CMO because they've always seen it as a sales channel. But it really is something that should be in their purview. And then social, obviously, this is being underpinned by a lot of retail media data today. And then creator content, which also is figuring out who the right creators are to work with, is underpinned by retail data.
So as in-store we're going to stay on in-store for a second. As in-store retail media spend allocation increases, so they're successful lobbying the CMO to get more funds, what impact will that have? You talked about this a little bit on online rich media, trade, video, and image content teams. We talked about agencies a little bit, that the creative will get better.
Yeah. Well, so first off, where does the budget come from, right? Right now, the easiest is just shifting between trade and e-commerce, and I think that'll always be part of it. But there's a strong argument that we need to tap into those national media budgets because it's serving the function of national media. It's almost in this way. In the fact that you can drive in-store sales is an impediment to winning those budgets because it forces you into this performance mindset. Whereas there's a lot of non-endemic advertisers that are buying in-store media now because they just see it as buying audiences. So that's really what I'd like to see a CPG CMO think about it as is I'm buying an audience first. I'm buying a version of TV. I'm getting audience reach and extension. Oh, and by the way, I'm also able to drive sales. I mean, this really is the kind of holy grail of branding and performance at the same time. What sort of new skills does it require? I think that, we need, this is one place where AI is going to help because it's going to help being able to iterate creative across more touch points. But I do think that it's going to require some new creative skills to think about what are the best executions to do in this physical store environment. You have a new dimension that you've never had before, right? It's TV's 2 dimensions.
Right.
Here, all of a sudden we have 3 dimensions. We're going to see some really cool stuff, and we haven't seen it yet. So I'm actually pretty excited about that.
I'm excited about it too. I think you're right. So how will popular content creators be leveraged better inside stores? And this is where now it's going to bridge the conversation to influencers and content. But how will they be leveraged better inside stores besides product sponsorships and in-store signage?
Well, yeah, I think the creators, first off, just they're going to be introduced into stores, right? As we have digital signage, I think the next step is to have those personalities driving the content. There's a lot of behaviors in the store that I think having a personality can help guide you towards. I think there's a lot of interesting opportunity to use more localized content creators who are from maybe a different geography. The ones that first come to mind for me are local athletes. I think athletes are great creators. People care what they think. And this isn't just your professional athletes in your DMA, but it's actually maybe college athletes. The NIL rules allow for them to be able to do that. One of the best examples that I can think of recently is with Hy-Vee and in Iowa and Caitlin Clark. They actually started working with her before she became a professional. And they launched a new flavor of Gatorade with her in store. They activated it across all these digital channels in the store. And I think that's what the future can look like. Not everybody's Caitlin Clark, but I do think a lot of places have their own version of those college athlete celebrities.
I agree, and some brands have been pretty successful leveraging that strategy. With Caitlin and Hy-Vee, I read an article that she really felt that the brands and aligned with her values, and she actually shops at Hy-Vee. So it's a great local example of bringing it all together. So
yeah, and the authenticity plays, right? That's the value of creators. They're trusted because they're authentic. So it's believable that for her to be in a Hy-Vee, and it's noticeable. This is also part of how media breaks through, and I think that's what creators have really cracked the code on, because our media environment is dominated by social media so much today, and we don't have the same scarcity that we used to.
Right.
What are creators great at? They're figuring out how to actually get you to stop your thumb. And so I think the version of it in store is you don't have thumb stopping creative, it's cart stopping creative. How do you traverse the store and all of a sudden you see Caitlin Clark and she's promoting that blue Gatorade, that's interesting. Okay.
Cart stopping creative. You said it here first. I love that. That's really great. And so if retailers have creators that they prefer and that they like to work with, would you recommend that brands align themselves with those influencers and creatives? Or do you recommend that brands stay true to their creator, their influencers that they like? Where's the happy medium?
I think it could be both.
Okay.
First off, there's so many micro influencers, and as we mentioned, even on a geographic basis, somebody who resonates with one geography won't resonate with another one. So I think there's some curation and human sensibility that should probably always go into that process of choosing maybe your most important creators. But I think you want to fill in the gaps and be informed by data to understand who are some other creators that can fit the bill. because there are so many out there, and it really is about aggregating a lot of them, especially because if their audiences are 10,000, 50,000 people, that's not necessarily enough on its own for a major media buy. You aggregate a bunch of them, all of a sudden you're talking about millions and tens of millions of people you can reach with that breakthrough content.
So how will companies navigate surprises regarding incrementality of retail media as investment levels evolve? So talk about the measurement incrementality, yeah.
I think the more we move to incrementality, the more I think that brands are finding it's a totally different story than what they're used to. First off, because ROAS, incremental ROAS, doesn't correlate at all with ROAS. So you could be driving a campaign that looks great from a ROAS perspective, and the exact opposite is true. You're actually not driving in incremental sales at all. I think what ultimately starts to happen is as you introduce better versions of incrementality measurement, and they can be very different than market mix models, which tend to favor tonnage, right? Market mix models tend to tell you more TV, more social, more offsite, because that's where the impressions are. Retail media tends to be undervalued because it doesn't have the same tonnage. New forms like causal modeling are actually starting to steer brand dollars more towards retail media. That's where the incrementality is.
So what changes must retailers make now to stay ahead of agentic shopping? So a totally different topic. And it's too early to know. It's not acceptable. You got to go a little bit farther. So what do you think about all this agentic shopping and how we can stay ahead of it?
Okay. Well, so first off, I'm in the minority in this position, but I've written about it recently. I don't think that agentic commerce is going to be a thing at all. In the true definition of it, which is that people are essentially going to type in a prompt saying, I need something with a few descriptors of what they need, and that these agents are just going to go off and do all the shopping for you and do all the decisioning, and then actually follow it all the way through to transaction. People don't part with their money like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons. I mean, people shop. First off, people like to shop. It's not all a purely utilitarian experience that just needs to be optimized around efficiency. So I just kind of don't buy the premise. And if there are versions of it where people do want this automation or efficiency, I would say those versions already kind of exist. One of them might be subscribe and save. I was mentioning,
smart.
Right? Subscribe and save exists today. I use subscribe and save for exactly two things: dog food and coffee.
Of course you do.
Right? Because it's very predictable. But if you don't know how much of something you're consuming on a regular basis, then you tend to want to be able to be in control of that purchase. So there are areas where obviously AI, it's too hard to ignore. You see how it's changing your own behavior with respect to search, information seeking, gathering, all of these things. I think actually the benefit of it is that it should probably drive some more incremental purchases. It might lead you down to some new paths that you wouldn't have gone to otherwise. It's not always going to be a push, but maybe more of a pull.
Right.
But I just think that there's a lot of opportunity, but to me, it evolves different parts of the path to purchase, just not the whole agentic experience.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think people do like to shop. There was a panel earlier today about the GLP-1 data and the amount of consumers and the volume of consumers that are going to be taking GLP-1s, and that when you move to a GLP-1, you spend more time shopping. So people are more interested in the food and the nutrition that they're consuming, and so they take more care in selecting the products that they're going to take and bring home to their families. So how will that fit in with agentic shopping? Probably very little, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, agents don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
Right? You as a consumer, you have very unique considerations, and you almost aren't conscious of the different variables that you're weighing in each instance. So I think it's also just putting too much on bots to be able to think like you do. And you can't broad brush what type of consumer you are, right? There are certain categories where I'm like, I want the most premium version. Quality really matters to me here. And other times I'm like, this is a commodity. I really don't care. Give me the cheapest one. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of people. Yeah. And also sometimes within the same category, I might make different selections depending on the context. Context is really important, by the way. This is kind of a bigger theme in advertising. Context of you in the moment and the context you're in
Right.
is such a big determinant for how we shop and what we buy. And it's not always clear to a bot what that context is or how you would act within that context.
They're not standing in the frozen food aisle looking at their options, determining what's going to be quick and easy to serve their family tonight. So the human aspect, I think, is really important, and that the agentic shopping lacks completely. How do you think creative will evolve as agentics become more prevalent? Because that's a topic also in the advertising world.
Well, this is where I felt a need to push back on agentic commerce, because if agentic commerce isn't going to happen like people are saying, then the subcurrent to this is an existential threat to retail media. And I think nothing could be further than the truth. Now, if agentic commerce happened and this is how we do the majority of our buying, then it's true that most traffic to retail sites would be bot traffic and not humans. I don't think that traffic's going away. We're actually seeing some really big shifts happening in media right now, where digital publishers, because of AI, are seeing traffic decline sometimes 20, 30%. So you'd be concerned that maybe the same thing is happening to e-commerce sites. Nope, exact opposite. A lot of them are seeing not just growth, but still double-digit growth. So what does that tell you? There are certain things where AI actually does become a substitute. If I'm already getting the content nicely summarized for me, it's a shift in content consumption. I don't think it's a shift in shopping consumption.
All right, Andrew, any last thoughts you want to share?
No, I think this is just a really exciting time for retail media. I'm personally very excited to see everything move into the store. I think next year is just going to be an absolutely massive year for in-store retail media. So I'm excited to see where everything goes next.
Great. Thank you for being here today. And that's it from Grocery Shop.
Thank you so much for having me.